crown shattered against the marble floor, and every noble in the grand hall of the Velanthi Empire dropped to their knees. Every noble except me, because humans weren't required to kneel. We weren't important enough for the gesture to matter. Queen Seraphina stood at the center of the hall, her silver skin luminescent under the crystal chandeliers, her 4 violet eyes fixed on the broken circlet at her feet. She had just thrown her own crown. The selection ceremony, the sacred ritual where she was supposed to choose a consort from among the gathered lords, had come to a spectacular halt. "Enough," she said, her voice carrying the cold precision of someone who had stopped caring about consequences. 17 cycles. 17 ceremonies. And still you bring me the same hollow offerings wrapped in new scales. Lord Velanthi, the favored candidate, rose from his kneel with practiced grace. His golden scales caught the light, his lineage impeccable, his political connections vast. He was, by every measure of Velanthi society, the perfect match for a queen. "Your radiance," he said smoothly. "Perhaps if you would specify what qualities you seek." "I seek someone who sees me." Her secondary eyes, the ones that read emotional resonance, swept across the assembled nobles. "Not the throne. Not the empire. Me. One. And in 17 cycles, not one of you has managed that simple task." I stood in the shadows near the servants' entrance, my diplomatic attaché uniform marking me as barely worth noticing. Third assistant to the human trade delegation, a title that meant I handled paperwork no one else wanted to touch. I had been on Velanthi Prime for 4 years, learning their language, their customs, their elaborate dance of status and honor. And in all that time, I had watched Queen Seraphina grow more isolated with each passing ceremony. She was beautiful, yes, but not in the way the human tabloids described alien royalty. Her beauty was in the weariness she hid behind perfect posture, in the loneliness that flickered in her secondary eyes when she thought no one was watching, in the way she touched the empty space beside her throne as if remembering someone who used to fill it. "If only she could be mine," I muttered, the words barely a breath. I didn't expect anyone to hear. The hall was vast, the nobles were loud in their offended murmuring, and I was nobody. But Velanthi hearing was sharper than human hearing, and the queen's secondary eyes, the ones attuned to emotional truth, had drifted toward the shadows where I stood. She went still. Completely, utterly still, in the way of her people when something unexpected registered. Then, slowly, she smiled. It wasn't the diplomatic smile she wore for ceremonies, or the cold smile she used to dismiss unwanted suitors. It was something small and genuine and startled, as if she had forgotten her face could move that way. "You," she said, and the single word silenced the entire hall. The human in the shadows stepped forward. Every eye turned toward me. I felt the weight of their contempt. Humans were newcomers to galactic society, our species barely worth acknowledging, our planet a backwater curiosity. For the queen to address me directly was unprecedented. Scandalous. I stepped forward anyway. My legs were steady, though my heart hammered against my ribs. "Your radiance," I said, offering the formal bow I had practiced for 4 years. "You spoke, just now. What did you say?" The hall was silent. Lord Velanthos's expression had shifted from dismissal to something uglier. The other nobles watched with the hungry attention of predators scenting weakness. I could lie. I could claim I had said nothing, or mutter some appropriate pleasantry and retreat back to my shadows. It would be the smart thing to do. The safe thing. But I had spent 15 years being safe. I had been safe when my wife asked for a divorce, when she said I was too passive, too willing to disappear into the background, too afraid to want anything loudly. I had been safe when I accepted this dead-end posting, telling myself it was fine, telling myself I didn't deserve better. I was tired of being safe. I said, "If only she could be mine." I replied quietly. "I apologize, Your Radiance." It was presumptuous. The queen's smile widened. There was something dangerous in it now, something sharp. "Then ask me properly," she said. The hall erupted. Lord Velanthi stepped forward, scales flushing with anger. "Your Radiance, this is absurd. This creature is not even a citizen of the Empire, let alone a noble. The selection ceremony has sacred requirements. The selection ceremony requires that I choose someone who sees me." The queen's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "In 17 cycles, Lord Velanthi, you have presented yourself 11 times, and in 11 presentations you have never once looked at my face, only at my crown." Velanthos's mouth opened, closed, opened again. His primary eyes darted involuntarily to the broken circlet on the floor, and the queen laughed, a sound like breaking ice. The human stays, she announced, as my guest, until I decide what to do with someone foolish enough to want a queen instead of a throne. They gave me quarters in the diplomatic wing, which was a polite way of saying they put me somewhere I could be watched. The rooms were lavish by human standards. Crystalline walls that shifted color with the light, furniture that molded itself to my body, a window overlooking the capital city's impossible spires. I didn't sleep. By morning, Chancellor Velanthi had summoned me to her office. She was the Queen's aunt, the only family Seraphina had left, and the closest thing the Empire had to a power behind the throne. She was also, according to every report I had ever read, utterly devoted to her niece's well-being. "Sit," she said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. I sat. Velanthi studied me with all four eyes. She was older than the Queen, her silver skin carrying the faint patina of age, her posture carrying the weight of someone who had seen empires rise and fall. "You understand," she said finally, "that my niece has made a spectacle of herself for you. Yes, Chancellor, you understand that the noble houses are furious, that Lord Velanthi has already filed 3 formal protests, that there are those who would see you dead simply to restore order." "Yes, Chancellor." "Then explain to me, human, why I should not have you quietly removed from this planet tonight." I considered the question. In my years on Velanthi Prime, I had learned that their culture valued honesty above almost everything else. Not the brutal honesty of insults, but the careful honesty of acknowledging uncomfortable truths. To lie to Chancellor Velanthi would be to fail her test before it began. "Because you've watched your niece reject every suitable candidate for 17 years, I said. "Because you've seen her grow more isolated, more brittle, more alone. And because when she smiled at me last night, you saw something in her you haven't seen in a very long time." Velanthi's secondary eyes flickered. "You presume to know what I saw." "I presume nothing, Chancellor. I only know what I saw. A woman so tired of being wanted for the wrong reasons that she's forgotten what it feels like to be wanted at all." Silence stretched between us. Then Velanthi leaned back in her chair, and something in her posture shifted. Not softening exactly, but becoming less rigid. "My niece's mother, my sister, died when Seraphina was young. Her father followed 2 years later, grief-stricken beyond recovery. She has been queen since she was barely an adult, surrounded by people who want her power, her influence, her approval. Never her." "I know," I said quietly. "How?" "Because I've watched her for 4 years, Chancellor. Not because I hope to gain anything. What could a third assistant hope to gain from a queen? But because she seemed familiar, like someone I recognized." Velanthi's eyes narrowed. "Recognized how?" I thought about my ex-wife, about the way she had looked at me in those final months. Through me, past me, as if I had already disappeared. About the way it felt to love someone who had stopped seeing you. Like someone who had forgotten they were allowed to be seen, I said. The Chancellor was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, moving to the window that overlooked the city. "The selection ceremony has rules," she said. "Ancient rules. A candidate must prove themselves worthy through 3 trials, a trial of wisdom, a trial of courage, and a trial of devotion. Lord Velanthi has passed all 3 in previous cycles. He has simply never been chosen. I understand. If you wish to remain in consideration, and I suspect my niece will insist upon it, you will face those same trials. You will be tested against standards designed for Velanthi nobility, with resources and training you do not possess. You will almost certainly fail." "I understand," I said again. Velanthi turned to face me. "Why would you attempt it?" I stood, meeting her 4-eyed gaze as steadily as I could. "Because she asked me to." "Then, ask me properly," she said. "And I'd like the chance to do that. Even if I fail." Something shifted in the Chancellor's expression. Something that might have been approval, or might have been pity. "The first trial is tomorrow," she said. "The trial of wisdom. You will be asked to resolve a dispute between 2 noble houses, with limited information and unlimited consequences. Lords have been exiled for failing it. And if I succeed, then you will face the trial of courage, which has killed candidates before." She paused. "My niece has requested to observe your trials personally. She has never done this for any candidate." I didn't know what to say to that, so I simply nodded. "One more thing, human." Velanthi's voice stopped me at the door. "My niece sees something in you. I do not yet know what. But if you hurt her, if you disappoint her, I will ensure you spend the rest of your very short life regretting it." "Chancellor," I said, "if I disappoint her, I'll regret it far more than anything you could do to me." The trial of wisdom was held in the Chamber of Echoes, a vast circular room where every whisper carried to every corner. The noble houses had sent representatives, each one watching with barely concealed hostility as I took my place in the center. The dispute was complex. Two houses claiming the same mining rights to an asteroid field, with generations of conflicting contracts, broken promises, and accumulated grievances. I had 1 hour to propose a resolution that both houses would accept. Lord Velanthi sat in the observer's gallery, his golden scales gleaming, his expression smug. He had resolved this same dispute, or one like it, in his own trial, using his family's political connections to pressure one house into concession. I didn't have political connections. I didn't have leverage. I had only what I had learned in 4 years of watching Velanthi society from the margins. Before I propose a resolution, I said, addressing the representatives of both houses, I would like to ask a question. Not about the mining rights. About the original grievance. The representatives exchanged glances. The original grievance is centuries old, Lady Soreth said stiffly. It hardly matters now. With respect, Lady Soreth, it seems to be the only thing that matters. Every contract, every negotiation, every broken promise, they all trace back to a single incident that neither house has ever formally acknowledged. A marriage alliance that was promised and then withdrawn. Silence fell. I saw Lord Velanthi lean forward, his smugness flickering into uncertainty. The mining rights are not the issue, I continued. The issue is honor. One house feels they were humiliated. The other feels they were justified. And for 300 years, you have fought over asteroids because fighting over asteroids is easier than admitting that someone's great-great-grandmother made a mistake. Lady Soreth's scales flushed. You dare. I dare to say what everyone in this room already knows. I kept my voice calm, my posture non-threatening. And I dare to propose that instead of dividing the mining rights, both houses establish a joint venture. Shared investment, shared profits, shared governance. It will require cooperation. It will require trust. But it will also require something more important. And what is that? Lord Marath, the other representative, asked quietly. An acknowledgement, from both houses, that the original grievance caused real harm, and that the centuries since have only deepened it. Not an apology. I know your culture doesn't frame such things that way. But an acknowledgement. A recognition that the pain was real. The chamber was silent. I could feel the weight of centuries of tradition pressing down on the moment. The rigid hierarchies, the careful dance of status and honor, the absolute prohibition against admitting weakness. Then Lady Soreth did something unexpected. She turned to Lord Marath, her secondary eyes, the ones that read emotional truth, fixed on his face. Your great-grandfather loved her, she said quietly. My great-grandmother. Duo. The histories don't record it, but the private letters. He loved her, and when the alliance was broken, he never recovered. Lord Marath was still. I know, he said finally. My family has always known. We never spoke of it because. He trailed off, looking at me. Because acknowledging pain is not something we do. Perhaps, I said carefully. It's something you could start. I passed the trial of wisdom. Not with the political maneuvering Lord Velanthi had used, but with something simpler. The willingness to name what everyone already knew but refused to say. That evening, Queen Seraphina summoned me to the royal gardens. She was waiting on a bench beside a fountain that sang with bioluminescent water, her simple robes a stark contrast to the ceremony's elaborate gowns. You surprised them, she said as I approached. Chancellor Velanthi says no candidate has ever resolved that dispute by addressing the actual source of it. They couldn't, I said. They were too invested in the game. I'm not part of the game, so I could see it differently. Sit. She gestured to the space beside her. Please. I sat, careful to maintain a respectful distance. The fountain's light painted shifting patterns across her silver skin. Why did you say it? She asked. Last night, in the shadows. Why did you say if only she could be mine? I considered the question. I could offer flattery, or deflection, or some carefully constructed diplomatic response. But she had asked for honesty, and I had already decided to give it to her. Because I've watched you for 4 years, I said. At ceremonies, at diplomatic functions, at trade negotiations. I've watched you carry an entire empire on your shoulders, while everyone around you fought over who would get to stand next to you when you finally broke. And I thought it must be very lonely. Being the thing everyone wants, and no one sees. Her secondary eyes fixed on my face, reading whatever truth lay beneath my words. You think you see me? I think I see someone who's tired. Someone who threw her crown on the floor because she couldn't bear one more ceremony where no one asked how she was doing. Someone who smiled at a human in the shadows because at least he was looking at her face instead of her throne. I paused. I don't know if I see your radiance, but I'd like the chance to try. She was quiet for a long moment. The fountain sang its soft song. The moons of Velanthi Prime rose above the garden walls, casting silver light over silver skin. Seraphina, she said finally. I'm sorry, my name. When we're alone. Not your radiance. Seraphina. Something warm bloomed in my chest. Marcus, I said. My name is Marcus. She nodded. A small gesture. But something in her posture eased, as if she had set down a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying. The trial of courage is in 3 days, she said. It will be difficult for a human. So, I've been told. You could withdraw. No one would blame you. A human attempting the trials is already unprecedented. No one expects you to complete them. I looked at her, at the weariness in her primary eyes, the faint hope in her secondary ones, the careful way she held herself, as if expecting disappointment. Do you want me to withdraw? I asked. No. The word was immediate, unguarded, and her scales flushed slightly as if she had surprised herself. No, I want to see what happens. I want to see if someone can want me enough to try. Then I'll try, I said simply. She smiled again, that same small, genuine smile from the ceremony hall. And for a moment, in the moonlit garden, she looked less like a queen and more like a woman who had just been given permission to hope. The trial of courage took place in the Pit of Proving, an ancient arena carved into the bedrock beneath the palace. The challenge was simple: survive. They released a Vorith into the arena, a creature the size of a large bear, with 6 legs, armored scales, and a predator's intelligence. Velanthi candidates faced it with traditional weapons, energy lances, vibroblades, powered shields. The trial wasn't about killing the creature. It was about demonstrating the courage to face it and the wisdom to survive. I had no traditional weapons. I had requested, through Chancellor Velanthi, a different approach. The request had been grudgingly approved, though Lord Varanthos had filed a protest claiming I was trying to avoid the trial's intent. I walked into the arena with nothing but a translator device and a pouch of synth meat. The Vorith circled me, its 6 legs moving in an unsettling rhythm, its eyes, 8 of them, clustered like dark gems, fixed on my movements. In the stands above, I could hear the murmuring of the noble houses. And in the royal box, Queen Seraphina. Seraphina watched with her secondary eyes wide. Easy, I said softly, pitching my voice low and calm. I'm not here to hurt you. The Vorith growled, a sound like grinding stone. I had spent 2 days researching these creatures. They were apex predators, yes, but they were also deeply intelligent. Pack animals with complex social structures, capable of recognizing individuals and remembering kindness or cruelty. The Velanthi hunted them for sport. No one, as far as I could find, had ever tried to communicate with one. I knelt, making myself smaller. Slowly, carefully, I opened the pouch of synth meat and held out a piece. The Vorith's growl faded. It tilted its massive head, 8 eyes blinking in sequence. I know you're scared, I said. They put you in a cage, dragged you here, threw you into this arena. You don't know what's happening, only that everything around you is threatening. I know how that feels. The creature took a step closer, then another. Its armored head lowered, nostrils flaring as it scented the offering. I'm not going to fight you, I continued. I'm not going to try to prove I'm stronger, or braver, or better. I'm just going to sit here and offer you this, and hope that you can tell the difference between an enemy and someone who doesn't want to hurt you. The arena was utterly silent. I could feel hundreds of eyes on my back, could imagine the confusion and contempt of the noble houses, could sense Seraphina's gaze burning into me from the royal box. The Vorith reached out and delicately took the synth meat from my hand. I exhaled slowly. The creature chewed, swallowed, and then, impossibly, settled onto its haunches in front of me. Not attacking, not fleeing, waiting. I offered another piece, and another, and gradually, carefully, I reached out and touched the armored scales of its head. The Vorith made a sound I had never heard described in any research, a low, thrumming vibration that resonated through its entire body. Later, I would learn that it was a sound they made only for pack members. A sound of recognition, of acceptance. Trial concluded, the arena herald announced, his voice carrying a note of stunned disbelief. The candidate survives. That night, Seraphina came to my quarters. She had never done this before, had never visited any candidate privately, according to Chancellor Velanthi. The scandal would be immense. She didn't seem to care. "How did you know?" she asked, standing in my doorway. "That it would work? I didn't," I admitted. "I hoped. I researched. I tried to understand the creature instead of just seeing it as an obstacle to overcome. But I didn't know you'd know." She stepped inside, the door sliding shut behind her. "You could have died." "Yes. Why risk it? Why not use conventional methods?" I thought about how to answer. Because the trial isn't about courage in combat. It's about the courage to face something terrifying. And the most terrifying thing isn't the Vorith. It's the possibility of being vulnerable. Of reaching out and being rejected. Of trying something different and failing in front of everyone. Her secondary eyes flickered. "That's a very human interpretation." "Maybe. May. But I think it's also true." She was quiet for a moment. Then she moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. "Lord Velanthi has filed another protest," she said. "He claims your methods were dishonorable. That you cheated. What do you think?" "I think." She paused. And when she spoke again, her voice was softer. "I think I have spent my entire life watching people fight. Fight for power. Fight for status. Fight for the right to stand beside me. And I think that watching you kneel in front of a monster and offer it kindness was the most courageous thing I have ever seen." Something caught in my throat. "Seraphina, the trial of devotion is tomorrow," she said, turning to face me. "It will be personal. The candidate must demonstrate their commitment to the Queen and the Empire. Most candidates offer pledges of military service or political alliance or vast wealth. I don't have any of those things." "No tie." She took a step closer. "You have something else. I don't know what it is yet, but I want to find out. And if I fail, if whatever I offer isn't enough." Her secondary eyes, those windows to emotional truth, fixed on mine. "Then I will know that I hoped for something impossible. That the human in the shadows was just another disappointment, dressed in kinder words. That would hurt you." "Yes. And you're still willing to risk it?" She smiled. That same small, genuine smile that had started everything. "You taught me something, Marcus. In that arena. You showed me that sometimes the most courageous thing is to reach out, even when you might be rejected. To offer something real, even when it might not be enough." She reached out and, for the first time, touched my hand. Her fingers were cool against my skin. Her touch light as breath. "I'm tired of being safe," she said quietly. "I'm tired of protecting myself from disappointment by refusing to hope. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that you've already given me something no other candidate ever has." "What's that?" "The memory of what it feels like to want someone, instead of wanting to want them." She left, before I could respond, and I stood in the window's light for a long time, feeling the ghost of her touch on my skin. The trial of devotion was held in the throne room before the assembled noble houses. This was not a test of skill or courage but of commitment, a candidate's final chance to demonstrate why they deserve to stand beside the Queen. Lord Velanthi went first. His offering was impressive. A pledge of his house's military forces, a strategic alliance with 3 other major houses, a dowry of mineral rights worth billions. He presented it with practiced elegance, his golden scales gleaming, his lineage and power on full display. The nobles murmured approval. Chancellor Velanthi watched with carefully neutral eyes. And Seraphina sat on her throne, her face unreadable, her secondary eyes fixed on some middle distance. Then it was my turn. I walked to the center of the room with nothing in my hands. No contracts, no pledges, no offers of wealth or power. Just myself, standing before the most powerful woman in the Empire, with nothing to give but words. "Your Radiance," I said, using the formal address for the first time in days. "I have no military forces to pledge. I have no political alliances, no wealth, no power. I represent a species that your empire barely acknowledges, from a planet most of your people couldn't find on a star map. By every measure your society uses to judge worth, I am nothing." The nobles shifted, their murmuring taking on a sharper edge. Lord Velanthi smiled. "But I've watched you," I continued. "For 4 years, from the margins, from the shadows. I have watched you carry an impossible burden with grace, watched you face an endless parade of suitors who wanted everything you could give them and offered nothing you actually needed. I have watched you grow lonelier with each passing ceremony, and I have wished, with everything I am, that I could ease that loneliness." The room was silent now. Seraphina's secondary eyes had found my face, and something in their depths made it hard to breathe. "I cannot offer you an empire," I said. "But I can offer you this. I will see you. Not the Queen, not the throne, not the power. You. I will ask you how your day was, and mean it. I will sit with you in silence when you need peace, and talk with you until dawn when you need distraction. I will notice when you're tired and remind you to rest. I will tell you the truth, even when it's difficult, and I will listen to your truth, even when it hurts. I knelt, not the formal bow of diplomatic protocol, but a genuine kneel, one knee on the cold marble floor. I offer you devotion, I said quietly. Not to the empire, not to the throne, not to the idea of you. To you. The woman who threw her crown on the floor because she was tired of being a prize. The woman who smiled at a stranger because he was the first person in years to look at her face. The woman who came to my quarters last night and admitted she was tired of being safe. Seraphina's breath caught. I heard it in the silence of the room. I don't know if that's enough, I said. I don't know if words and promises can compete with armies and alliances. But I know that I mean them. Every word. And I know that I will spend the rest of my life trying to live up to them, if you give me the chance. I stayed kneeling, my head bowed, my heart hammering. The silence stretched. I heard the nobles' whispers starting again, heard Lord Velanthi beginning to speak. Enough. Seraphina's voice cut through everything. I looked up to see her standing, her face still unreadable, her secondary eyes bright with something I couldn't name. The selection ceremony will reconvene tomorrow, she announced. I require time to consider. The nobles erupted into chaos. Chancellor Velanthi moved to restore order. And through it all, Seraphina's eyes stayed fixed on mine. Then she turned and walked out of the throne room, and I was left kneeling on the marble floor, unsure whether I had just won everything or lost it all. That night, they tried to kill me. I was in my quarters when the door slid open. Not with the gentle chime of a welcome visitor, but with the sharp crack of an override. 3 figures entered. Hired blades by the look of them, their faces covered, their weapons drawn. I had no weapons. I had no combat training. I was a diplomat, a bureaucrat, a man who had spent his life avoiding confrontation. But I had also spent 4 years in a world where assassination was a political tool, and I had learned to be aware of my surroundings. I threw the chair at the first attacker, used the moment of confusion to reach the window, and triggered the emergency beacon Chancellor Velanthi had quietly given me after the trial of courage. In case the noble houses express their displeasure, she had said, her tone making clear what kind of expression she meant. The guards arrived before the assassins could finish their work. I had a cut on my arm, a bruise on my face, and I was alive, which was more than the assassins had intended. Chancellor Velanthi arrived minutes later, her face carved from ice. Lord Velanthi, she said flatly. The assassins were from his household guard. He will claim they acted without his knowledge, but the evidence is clear. What happens now? Now? She looked at me with something that might have been respect. Now you have a choice. You can allow this to be handled quietly. Velanthi will be privately censured, his candidacy withdrawn, and you will be offered compensation and safe passage off-world. Or you can demand a formal tribunal. Velanthi will be publicly accused, his house will be humiliated, and the entire empire will know that he tried to murder a human diplomat because he was afraid of losing to one. I thought about it. The safe choice was obvious. Take the compensation. Go home. Forget this ever happened. I had already proven whatever I needed to prove. I had already given Seraphina whatever I could give. But I thought about her face in the throne room. The way she had looked at me when I knelt. The brightness in her secondary eyes. Tribunal, I said. Velanthi nodded slowly. You understand this will make you a target. Other noble houses may decide that eliminating you is worth the risk. I understand. And you choose to stay anyway. Yes. She studied me for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she inclined her head, a gesture of respect I had never seen her offer to anyone outside the royal family. My niece chose well, she said quietly. I doubted it at first. I was wrong. The tribunal was brutal. Lord Velanthi denied everything. His house rallied to his defense, and for hours the political machinery of the empire ground toward a conclusion that seemed inevitable. A minor censure. A quiet withdrawal, no real consequences. Then Queen Seraphina stood. I will speak, she said, and the chamber fell silent. She walked to the center of the tribunal floor, her gown trailing behind her, her posture carrying the weight of 12,000 years of royal authority. Lord Velanthi claims the human is beneath consideration, she said. He claims that no true Velanthi would ever choose such a candidate, and therefore his actions, whatever they were in service of protecting the throne from embarrassment. Velanthi nodded, his expression smug. But Lord Velanthi misunderstands what I have been searching for, Seraphina continued. In 17 cycles of selection ceremonies, I have been offered power, wealth, alliances, and prestige. I have been offered everything a queen might want. Except the one thing I needed. She turned to face me, and her secondary eyes were bright with tears. The human offered me devotion, she said. Not to my throne. Not to my empire. To me. And when I considered his offering, I realized something I had forgotten in 17 years of being queen. Her voice dropped, soft enough that only those closest could hear. I am allowed to be happy. I am allowed to want something for myself, not for the empire. And I am allowed to choose someone who sees me as a person, not as a prize. She turned back to the tribunal. Lord Velanthi attempted to kill a candidate because he was afraid, not of losing power, but of losing his assumption that power was all that mattered. And in doing so, he proved exactly why I could never choose him. Her voice hardened. The tribunal will find him guilty. His house will be stripped of its candidacy privileges for 3 generations. And the human Marcus Cole will be recognized as a legitimate candidate for my selection. The chamber erupted. But through the chaos, I saw only Seraphina's face, the tears on her silver cheeks, the exhaustion and hope warring in her eyes. And I understood what she had just done. Not just defended me, but declared herself. Publicly, irrevocably, she had chosen to hope. The selection ceremony was held 3 days later, in the grand hall where everything had begun. The noble houses had been reduced to silence, Lord Velanthos's disgrace still echoing through the political landscape, and I stood alone in the center of the floor. Queen Seraphina descended from the dais. She was wearing the ceremonial gown again, the one that shifted colors with her emotions, and as she approached me, it shimmered through shades of violet and silver and something warm that I had no name for. Marcus Cole, she said, her voice carrying through the hall. 3rd attached to the human trade delegation. You have completed the 3 trials. You have survived assassination. You have stood before my empire and offered something no other candidate has ever offered. She stopped in front of me, close enough that I could see the rapid pulse in her throat. I have a question for you, she said quietly. Before I make my choice, ask. That night in the shadows, when you said if only she could be mine, did you mean it? Or were you simply speaking into the darkness? I thought about the question. I thought about 4 years of watching from the margins, about a marriage that had crumbled because I was too afraid to want anything loudly, about the choice I had made when I stepped forward in this very hall. I meant it, I said. I didn't expect anyone to hear. I didn't expect anything to come of it, but I meant every word, and now, after everything, after the trials and the tribunal, and the political chaos, now I mean it more. I reached out, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. I took her hand, cool silver against warm human skin. If only she could be mine, I said. And then you smiled and told me to ask properly. So I'm asking. I knelt, still holding her hand. Seraphina Dogteru. Not your radiance, not the queen, Seraphina. I have nothing to offer you but myself. But I give that freely, completely, without reservation. I will see you always. I will stand beside you, not behind or above. I will remind you that you are allowed to be happy, and I will spend every day trying to be worthy of that happiness. I looked up at her face, at the tears streaming down her silver cheeks, at the smile breaking across her features, at the thick way her secondary eyes glowed with something that looked like joy. Will you have me? I asked. She laughed, a sound I had never heard from her, bright and unguarded and free. You impossible human, she whispered. You wonderful, foolish, brave, impossible human. She pulled me to my feet and, in front of her entire court, she kissed me. The hall erupted into chaos. Scandalized nobles, confused diplomats, Chancellor Velanthi looking on with an expression of profound satisfaction. But I barely heard any of it. I was too busy kissing a queen and feeling, for the first time in years, like I had finally done something that mattered. When we finally broke apart, Seraphina turned to face her court. Her gown was blazing with color now. Golds and roses and brilliant whites. Emotions she had hidden for years finally set free. I have made my selection, she announced. Marcus Cole of Earth, the human who asked me properly. Later, in the quiet of the royal gardens, we sat together by the singing fountain. Her hand was in mine, her head resting against my shoulder, and for a long while neither of us spoke. The empire will be furious, she said eventually. The noble houses, the political alliances, the ancient traditions, all of it will be disrupted. I know. There will be challenges, opposition, perhaps more assassination attempts. I know. She lifted her head to look at me, her secondary eye searching my face. And you're not afraid? I thought about the question. I thought about everything I had risked, everything I stood to lose, everything that lay ahead. I'm terrified, I admitted. But I'm done letting fear make my choices. I spent too many years disappearing into the background because it was safer. And all it got me was lonely. She nodded slowly. I understand that. More than you know. So we'll be terrified together, I said. We'll face the challenges and the opposition and the assassination attempts together. And we'll remind each other, every day, that we're allowed to be happy. Her smile was soft, genuine, free of the weariness that had marked her for so long. When I told you to ask me properly, she said quietly, I didn't know what I was hoping for. I just knew that you were the first person in years who seemed to see me. And I wanted desperately to find out if that was real. Was it? Yes. She reached up and touched my face, a gentle gesture, intimate in a way that her culture rarely allowed. You see me, even. Not the crown, not the throne, not the weight of empire. Just me. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to explain what that means, after so long alone. I turned my head and kissed her palm. You don't have to explain. I see you. I'll keep seeing you. And whenever you forget, I'll remind you. She laughed again, that bright, free sound that I was beginning to love. My court will never recover, she said. A human consort. The scandal will last for generations. Good. They could use some shaking up. And Earth? Your people? What will they say? I thought about the homeworld I had left behind. The life I had tried and failed to build there. The wife who had left because I wasn't enough. They'll say, I reached above my station, I said. They'll say I got lucky, or that I must have tricked you somehow. But they'll be wrong. I didn't trick you, and it wasn't luck. I just saw someone who needed to be seen, and I refused to look away. Seraphina was quiet for a moment. Then she shifted closer, her head returning to my shoulder, her hand tightening in mine. This is only the beginning, she said softly. There will be so much work to do. Political alliances to rebuild, traditions to adapt, a galaxy to convince that a human belongs beside a Velanthi queen. I know. But right now, in this moment, she closed her eyes. Right now, I just want to sit here with you. In the quiet. Without any of it mattering. I pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Then we'll sit. For as long as you want. The fountain sang its soft song. The moons rose above the garden walls. And in the silver light, a queen and a human held hands and let themselves, finally, be at peace. Years later, they would tell the story differently. They would talk about political machinations, about strategic alliances, about how the human diplomat had somehow manipulated his way to the throne. They would be wrong. The truth was simpler, and stranger, and more powerful than any political calculation. A lonely man looked at a lonely woman and wished out loud that she could be his. And she smiled and told him to ask properly. And he did. The end.